In this video, I'm going to explain the basic components of Microsoft Excel, and then from there we'll carry on and we'll look at some of the learning objectives that are covered in chapter number 1 of Excel and apply that to a practical spreadsheet that students can then use in their own personal lives. The example we're going to use is called a personal budget. But before we get to that point, let's talk about Excel in its basic components. And this is basically kind of a repeat somewhat of the learning objectives that you're doing with the MIT lab. But this is my lecture portion and something very similar to my face-to-face class. So I do something very similar to my face-to-face class. So you'll get the same materials as you would if you were seeing me in class. So to get started at the top here, let's just start. Excel comes up as, and they've branded it as green. Microsoft Word is blue, and PowerPoint is kind of an orange color. So each of their programs have their own color and icons and stuff like that. So at the top here, we've got the title bar. And there's a lot of stuff up here, and people don't really pay too much attention at the beginning, but at the start it says autosave. So if you want your work to be consistently saved in case there's an outage or something happens, this is a save button. This is where you can manually save what you've worked on. This is undo, redo. I put on a special tool here. This is called a speak cell to speak or speak the cell feature. What that does is it reads back. I use this as a way of checking my work or having it read back to me. This area here is called the quick access toolbar, and you can modify it and customize it by this little pull down right here. You can see that what has been currently selected is automatically saved. That's this one here, and save, which is here, and so on. Now there are literally hundreds of different things that you can put up here, and this is used for people who want to make it easier for common features that you use in Excel. So these are kind of the most common features. Myself, I like to have this tool here because it's not readily available in the menu system. Like there's nowhere inside of these that you can actually access that tool. So this is a really important area because you can access things that are not available in the menus. To do that, you can go down here to where it says more commands, and it brings you up to the Excel options, quick access toolbar, and it shows you all the popular commands. But if you want something very unique, you can say all commands. And from there you can go down and you'll see how many there actually are inside of Excel. So you can see Excel has, it seems overwhelming, I think, when you first see this, of how many different tools and features Excel actually has. All right, so if you go down, I think it's called Speak. So I'm going to go down to and they're in alphabetic order. And you can see here that it's Speak the Cell. If you want it to be read back to you, you can select this one right here and click Add. But you can see I've already added it here. For example, if I want something else like this one right here, I could say add, and then that would add it to my quick access toolbar. I'm not going to do that, so I'll take that back off. And when you want to save it, you can click OK. So that's quick access toolbar. Now the next one is up here is the title. It says book 1, and the reason that Excel calls it a book is because that's exactly what it is. It's a virtual book. It has a book with sheets in it. So if you first look at this, when you open Excel, it's opening a book, and then down at the bottom, there's only one sheet inside the book. So this is called a workbook. This is called a worksheet in the book. And you can have as many sheets as you want. You keep pressing the plus, and you can have as many pages you want to add to that. And you can have multiple ones in here. In this course, I do have an example of what we're going to be doing in the course, and this is an example of the sheet. So in this workbook is called CSIS 1190, and inside here I've got a series of different lectures. So I put all of my worksheets in one workbook. For example, today we'll be looking at how to create a personal budget, and next week we'll look at how to do an analysis on how to buy a house, do a stock portfolio, do a database, and then from there other specialty things like how to analyze a very specific area of data, and we'll do a little bit of conditional programming concepts for what if analysis, and etc. So that's an example of what we're going to be building in the workbook over time throughout the course. So, and when you save an Excel file, it saves it as an XLSX file. So there's 4-digit extension, and that's how you can see that it's an Excel file. They used to be called XLS back in prior 2003, And then after 2003, they added the X, which was just part of their naming convention for all of their Office files. For example, Microsoft Word saves in a DOCX file format, or PowerPoint is a PPTX file type. So it was to denote that it's a Microsoft Office file and of what particular program. All right, moving on from there, it tells you whether you've logged in. Now, what's nice about this is it tells me that I'm logged into my cloud and I've got access to my OneDrive, which is a 1 terabyte file storage center. So if I was to click on, save my current worksheet in my workbook, it would save it to my local, my remote, or my cloud storage, wherever you guys decide to organize your files. So in the previous class, I think it was, in week 1, you guys talked about file management. How do you set up folders and how do you get organized? And when you create an online account, you have access to that OneDrive. And every time you log in, you have access to it. So it sort of follows you around. So there's no real need anymore to use things like USB drives. Those are really kind of a 2015 technology. All right, if you want, you can also control your screen, minimize, restore, or maximize, or close your application. So to close Excel for the day, you can click on the X here, or under File, you can also go down here and click on Close. Those are 2 ways to do it. Now, moving down the screen here, we've got the menu bar here at the top, and it starts off with File. Now, there's a difference between the file and all the rest of them. Files referred to as the backstage. This is a area where it allows you to bring data in or send data out or configure the Excel system. So any kind of questions relative to data moving in or coming out of Excel normally goes through the backstage area. Now, there is other ways you can access data through the menu, but this is one of the key ones. For example, I can create a new worksheet and then enter data into it. I could open up one from a cloud drive. I can look at information, technical information, metadata on my spreadsheet. I can save it to another cloud drive and send my data out, save it as a brand new, and so on. It gives me those options. I mean, publish it on the net, export to a different format, share it with somebody else online, send it to an outsourced physical output device like a printer. And also there is all your accounts for who you are. That would be up here at your accounts. You can do feedback and also all the options that come with Microsoft Excel and how to customize it for your need. And I'll be looking at this in another video later on. All right, so that's a little bit about the File tab. Now, this one up here, these are called the ribbons. Now, ribbons have a theme. So, for example, there's a ribbon for Home, and they're broken down into logical groups. So the logical groups have these vertical lines that separate all of these controls or tools together, which all have to do with the clipboard, like cutting from the clipboard, pasting to the clipboard, and different types of pasting. Like there's in this example, there's only 2, but there could be multiple types in that one. All right, so if we move on from there, you'll see within the group, for example, font, for how you're going to format the look of your data would all be done under this right here. Now, these are the most commonly used controls, but if you want more, there's a group expansion control right here. When I click on this, it will open up a dialog box, and the dialog box gives us full control over all of the formatting of your worksheet. So if you have anything to do with how the appearance of your data looks, it would be found inside of the Home tab under the font group and then a specific control. A lot of times as I'm explaining this course, I will say go into the Home tab, go into the Alignment group, and select, for example, Merge and Center. Now they don't have the words here, they have iconic symbols that represent what it does. So you have to get to learn what they are. The pictures kind of give you a hint. You can see here, this is all left aligned, this is all center aligned, and this is right aligned. You'll get to learn them as you use the system over time. Now, this is an odd one. It says a number, it's a group on its own, but there's just a pull down, which gives us another subset here of most commonly formatted numbers. And then if you want to get into even further, we can go into the number format right there. This is how you format numbers. So the difference here is fonts are for your text and the numbers are for your numbers. Pretty straightforward. And I think if you want to go into format here, there is also number there. So what you're going to find is there's duplicate ways of doing the same thing. And Excel, people will learn one way over another, or it just makes it, they're trying to make it easier to access because you're formatting numbers a lot in Excel. And so this is just giving you an option. So technically you wouldn't require this on the ribbon if you knew to click on this and then click on this. So that's a double click to get access to that, where this one here is a one click and then you select the format directly. So this is a quicker way of doing it. Sometimes in the MIT lab, they will want you to do it in a particular way. And some students have come back to me and said, well, I know how to do it and it's not working. And the reason is, in the MIT lab, they say very clearly, they want you to do it in the most efficient way. And this is the way that they've instructed you in the simulation, in the textbook. They want you to be aware of the multiple ways, but they're trying to get you to do it in the most efficient way. And if you think about it, it makes sense because you want to be as efficient and less clicks as possible. If you're formatting a lot of data and you have to go through a lot of clicks to do that, it is going to slow you down. So you definitely want to be as efficient as possible. Now, from there, we get into a little more specialty formatting. So we get into what they call styles. The styles are like how you format your data. Now, these are like pre-existing templates, types of styles, and you can just use these, and I'll be showing you an example as we progress through this lecture series, how these work. I'm not going to do it right now. Conditional formatting and all of those types of things. We'll be talking about these in detail. Right now in this video, it's just to go over the menu, the ribbon, and the different groups. All right, so moving on to insert. Again, as we progress through, we'll be explaining these, and you can spend time, exploring, but you should notice right away, the reason and how the menu system works is to try to be more intuitive. So for example, if I'm trying to access an external database, I would probably not go to the Home tab to look for something to allow me to do that. I'm looking for something that's going to have something to do with the database. Well, at the top here, we've got a link here called Data, and then from there, we would have to look in these groups for that particular need. So to find things in Excel, you want to look at the titles of the ribbons, then go into the groups, and then narrow it down. And then even from there, if you can't find it, there's a search box right here that will also help you guide you to the place where you're also looking. All right, so moving on down a little further, this area right here is called the name range box. This tells you where you currently are. So it imitates what this is. So right now I'm sitting in a particular position on the spreadsheet. Positions are identified by their columns, named in letters, and their rows, and they're identified by numbers. So if you put it goes by column first and then by row. So if I was to select this particular cell, they call that a cell, it would be considered C4. Now we need this because we're going to be coding things and we need to know where particular data resides, and we need to be able to talk to it as in programming. They call this almost like a variable. We're going to have a variable here called C4, and we're going to put a value into it. So this is a way for us how to control all of our data. All right, now moving over here, this allows me to, if I type in, let's say, hello world, wherever I'm actively entered into that range, and I start typing data in, it appears in this edit area right here. And it will place it within the cell. So if I type that in, and then if I click on the check mark, it enters without moving the cell. If I was to say hello world again, you can see here how the computer automatically thinks that I'm, let's say, hello world 1. I can push enter. So instead of pushing this symbol here, I can push enter. So this gives you options. Do you want to use the keyboard or do you want to use the mouse? Which is good because depending on what you're doing, if you're doing a lot of data entry, you might want to use the keyboard, but if you're just doing a one-time shot, you might use the mouse. The other nice thing about this one here is it enters and retains you in the cell, but if I hit enter, it enters and drops you to the next cell. Kind of like in a word processor, it's a carriage return, drops you to the next line. So understanding how all these subtle behaviors works is critical on how to be efficient with Excel. Here's your edit area right here. This is what they call a formula bar. But the formula bar is used for entering data. And there's 3 types of data that you can enter in Microsoft Excel. The first data you can enter is referred to as a label. A label is simply anything that's a letter or a title or anything like that. And you'll notice that labels, so I'll go label 1, and I'll type in label 1, 2, 3. You'll see that labels are all left aligned. The other type of data entry in Excel is numbers, or what they call a value. Now, I type in the word value and it's a label, but if I want a number, I type in 1, 2, 3. Let's say that's a number. Now push enter, you'll notice it goes on the right side. So to visually see a label and a value, you can see what side of the cell it's formatted to. We do this because we read left to right, and numbers, we all line up to the decimal point. All right, so I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see that example right there, how all those values right here are being lined up to the decimal places. Now there's one more type of entry, and that is some kind of calculation. So if we're going to calculate something, there's a variety of ways to do this, but they all share one unique feature. We start off with an equal key. The equal key is an old legacy symbol that we've used since computers first started, and that symbol has carried on into all the spreadsheets that started right back from the late 80s. They have used the equal key to come up with an answer. So when I start off with that key, it tells the computer you want a calculation of some sort. Now you can simply just type in 1 + 1, and that's a simple calculation. It's a static calculation. It's like every single cell in Excel is like a basic calculator. It's like a screen on a calculator, but you got literally millions of these cells in a worksheet. And normally we would type in 2 + 2 and then press the equal on a calculator, but in Excel we do it by starting off with the equal key. So equals, and then we can type in whatever else we want. We can type in 110, and we can use the star for multiply, and we'll go something like 12, and it'll do a calculation with multiply. All right, now if you want to do a more complicated calculation, you can also use your BEDMAS, follow the BEDMAS rules. So if you're going to do something like 1 + 2, and then you're going to multiply it by 3, that would be, how would it calculate the number? Well, it would be 2 × 3, and then you would add the 1, right? So it comes up with 7. But if we were to do the same thing, the same calculation, but this time we put put brackets around this, and we come up with a different number because it follows the rules of BEDMAS. All right, so those are your 3 different types of data entry: labels, values, and calculations. Calculations will carry on. There's so many different options for calculations. Here's another quick one. This one is called a function, and most people who've used Excel have used the basic sum function. It's one of the most common that they have, and it's just simply add up numbers. Now how it works is we want an answer, so we still have to start off with the equal key. Then the second part is we type the name of what specifically do you want to do. What kind of math function do you want? Well, I want to sum up. Well, up here I just use the sum feature, right? I use the plus, but it's in a very simplistic way of entering static numbers. But if I was to type in sum, and then we use a bracket to put in what am I trying to sum up. The concept of the bracket is to enter in what they refer to as arguments. An argument is something that is variable. So you can type in, for example, 1 here. I want to add 1. And if you look below, this is the argument list. So it says, what number do you want to sum? And then they use a comma. Comma denotes separation between the arguments. And I could say 1 + 1. And that would come up with the answer of 2. All right, you think, well, that's a lot of work just to add up the 2, and it is. Now let's go back here and let's carry this on. I could go, let's go here, 1 + 2 + 3. Oops, I got an extra comma in there. Can't have any typos. Those are called syntax errors. 3, 4, 5, etc. And it will come up with, it'll add that up. Now that's one option we can use the sum function. Another one is we could say equal to the sum of bracket, and we can type in the actual numbers that where they reside. So instead of typing in like 2 comma 120 comma 7 9 and 21, and it comes up with the answer, I can type in where does that particular number reside, what's the address, what is the range name that the data lives in. So I would type it in like this, equals to the sum of, and I want D14. So I would type in D14. Now you'll notice it color codes the cell to help you write the formula. The next one would be D15. I could use a small d. That's fine, comma. Now another way of entering it in is I could use my mouse. I could just simply click on the cell I want. That's my preferred method, probably the most easy, because you don't you know exactly where to click, because otherwise you got to know which column and row you're in. And then from there I could do enter in the rest of those, and I come up with the same number, 159 in this example. You think, well, I get that, but that, you know, which way is better? There's pros and cons to both methods. Now the nice thing about having a function like this is that if I do change this number in the future, let's say I change it to 3, it automatically recalculates. And that's really the power of Excel, is this ability to play what if. What if I change my data? How will it impact all my calculations to give me different results? Therefore, I can go through scenarios and simulations to ask questions of the data to give me different results. I'm looking for a particular goal. My goal is to get to a certain number range. How do I do that? I can do that by entering in different values. I can play what if I type this in. So at this very, very basic level, Excel's already helping us with that. Now let's go through one final example, and that would be, how do you do a function with not just selecting the individual cells, but you want an entire range. I want to start at the top here, and I want to go down to the bottom. So what you're looking at here is I've selected D14, and I hold the mouse down and I drag the mouse down to D18, and I've created what they call a range. And when I push enter, it calculates it you know, a little bit quicker. And the nice thing here is now that anytime I change these numbers, I can still play what if, which is great. Now another option, let's take that out. One more option is, because this is so common of adding up numbers, all you have to do now in Excel, a little trick here, is click on the Home tab under the Editing group or pull down. You can click Auto Sum. If I click Auto Sum, it automatically types in the sum function. It types in and highlights the range until it gets to the top of all of the values, and it stops because you cannot calculate a label. All right, so I push enter, and there we go. We come up with that same answer. So those are a couple of examples of types of data that you can enter into Microsoft Excel. All right, to clean things up or to erase things, there's a variety of ways, but probably the easiest way to start here would be to select what you don't want and press the delete key. So I can press the delete key, use my arrow down, delete, arrow down, and so on. I can do this one at a time, but that's a lot of work, a lot of keyboards. Another way to do it is to select a range. So I can simply highlight all of the data in a range and press delete. It's another quick way of doing it. All right, so that's kind of a general introduction to the way of inputting data. Now let's have a look at the actual example that I'd like to do for my class. During my face-to-face classes, during Excel Chapter 1, I want to provide an example that's meaningful for students, and I find that what's really common for everybody, and what some people probably should do but don't do very often, is their own personal budgets. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start back at sheet number 1, and I'm going to change this sheet in the book, and I'm going to call this sheet, I'm going to right click on that sheet tab. So again, I'm going to right click here, and then I'm going to left click on rename, and I'm just simply going to call this my budget. Now, am I going to call it budget 2021 or 2022 or whatever year that I'm going into? It's really up to you, and how you want to organize and structure your workbook. I've seen you know, some people who will have, like, you know, 2021, and then on the next year they'll have budget 2022, and then so on. And as people go through their life, they can keep track of their finances, their budget, and make better financial decisions because they know exactly where they're at. And that's really the objective here, is to create a budget to help you better manage your money. All right, so what is a budget? Some of you might not know or have never done a budget, but a budget basically is just taking a look at how much money that you make, how much money you have coming in, and how much money that you're spending. So you want to budget yourself so you have enough money for your expenses. Hopefully, there's one more kind of key component, and that's how much you have left over. Hopefully you have a surplus, you're not going into debt, so you'll have some savings. So if you're in a business, you have profits or you have income as a company, and then you have expenditures, and then at the end you want to calculate the company's profits. Personal budgets are similar, where you have your personal income, your wages, and then you've got your expenses, and finally you can calculate your savings. So that's what we want to do here. So the goal of this is to create this worksheet right here. So I'm going to show you this up on the screen here, and this is pretty much what we're going to try to do. So we're going to create this in the next 30 minutes. So if you want, you can take a pause at this point, come back, and start fresh with learning how to enter all this data and to do the basic calculations. All right. All right, so to get started, I'm going to start putting down some basic labels that you'll need, and at the top I'll put in something like Ryan's budget to get started, and from there I might want to put in a date, so I can put in a date of when the budget was done, and I can then start to put in my details. Now the details I'm going to put down is what items, line items I'm going to have in my budget. I'm going to start off with my income. So I'm going to start off with a title here called income. Because it's a personal budget and I have a job, they refer to it as my income. And you could have something like a job, you have your main job, maybe. You might have a part-time job. You might have some money coming in from taxes coming back to you. You could have money coming in from gifts. So what you want to do is you want to list out all of these types of income sources that you might have over the year. Now, you might not get taxes every single month, but you might get it, in April or May. You might get a GST check. You might get some supplement from the government at some point. You might have a couple of part-time. You might have a full-time and a part-time job, and that might fluctuate. So we're going to put those headings in all the possible options that you could receive income. Now, from there, we want to calculate how much you would totally make of all of your income. Kind of make sense? All right, so from there, that'll cover the income. Let's go into expenses. All right, so expenses really is kind of a personal thing because we all spend money on different things, but a lot of us on similar things. Most of us have some kind of expense for housing. I like to put expenses that are the most, costly at the beginning, and then work back from there. So I find housing is probably one of the most expensive. And then from there, maybe it could be like transportation. Maybe you've got a car. You could have a loan. Food's always, groceries are food. Maybe you want to separate them. You want to say something like dining out. Maybe you do Uber Eats or something like that quite often, and then you buy groceries. Maybe you have household items like cleaning, supplies, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you have a credit card loan as well. So this could be a personal loan, could be a student loan, or you might have education expenses, medical expenses. All right, so you get the idea here, I think. Now, some people can even break these down even further. So let's say under transportation, we want to break that down into a car loan, into gas and oil maybe. So what I can do is I can just highlight the row I want to insert, and I'm going to drag my mouse down a few lines here, and then I'm going to right click. So I selected them with my left mouse. My right mouse, I'm going to have the option to insert. It's going to push everything down. So I got transportation. I'm going to put down my, let's see here. Well, I've got a loan here, but I've got a car loan maybe. So I go car loan, and then I got insurance. Then I got gas, and I got repairs. I didn't even put that in there. But this is almost like a subset. So these three right here could be a subset of transportation, and I can use this little tool right here to kind of indicate that. In fact, if you look at the indent tool, I could take all of these and indent them because they're all a subset of income and expenses. These are all a subset right here. So I'm going to just try that. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Not that one. There we go. Perfect. I mean, it doesn't look very good right now, but we'll format it later to make it look good, and we'll align it later to make it look good. All right, now as I've been entering all this data in, you'll notice that my column is not large enough for the data. Now what I can do is I can put my mouse between the columns, hold my mouse down and drag it to the right, or I can double click it. If I double click it, it will auto fill or auto size the column to fit the data that's the largest in that particular column. So simply put the mouse between until you get the double arrow right there, double click, and it'll set that up. All right, sorry, carrying on with my loans. I'm just going to, for the sake of this video, I'm going to just say miscellaneous, and then after that I'll say total. And total should probably go back to the left. And then from there, I want to calculate my real true goal here, and that is my goal of trying to save money. Why are we actually building this worksheet? Because we're trying to figure out our finances, and we're trying to save up for a particular, maybe we're trying to save up to buy a house, or we're saving up to buy something. We want to have savings or investments. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that that is also on the left. All right, so from here, we can go in and start to look at things like the projections. So we're assuming that we're going to start this at the beginning of the year. So let's say this is a projection for 2022, and I'm going to start with January. I'm going to probably type in things like February and keep going across for the whole month. So you could enter it in manually, but if you know a lot of these little tricks, you can save a lot of time and from making errors too. If you grab this little handle on the bottom right corner, this is kind of an intelligent relative copy feature. So what it means is relative means if I move it from February to the right, then the computer says, oh, FEB looks like February. Do you want MAR for March? Because we use this a lot in spreadsheets. So if I drag it across, we can go right across and forecast it into December. And I can type in, I want the total for the year. Now what I'm going to get with this data is I want to see how much in my job one do I make for the entire year, and what is my total? So that's the answer I want. I want to know what that is. You guys probably know that. At the end of the year, you get a T4 statement. It tells you what you made for the end of the year. But this way, you can track it. You can get a better understanding of where you're at financially. All right, let's put in some actual data now. So to this point, we've been putting in labels. Let's take a look at the second type of data entry, which is values. So at this point, I'm going to just put in some mock data. You guys can put in your own data if you want. That's fine. So let's say you make $2,000 a month. Now, if you don't know how much you make, you can also do a calculation in the field. So I can say, well, I'm not really sure how much I make, but I can say equal to, I know what I make per hour. Let's say you make $16 per hour and you work 40 hours per week. So you could go 16 times 4. That would give you, oh, sorry, not 16 times 4. It would be $16 per hour times 40 hours per week times 4 weeks for the month. Now that's not really a perfect formula because there's sometimes there's more than just 4 weeks in the month because you got 30 something days. So you could do it, just calculate it individually. That would be another way to do it. Or if you were on a salary, another way to do that would be say, well, I make, let's say $40,000 a year, and you could divide that by 12 months. And you'd say, well, I make $3,333.33 per month. But you have to ask yourself, is that how much you actually make net dollars, or do they have to still take off your taxes and the rest of it? Because we're really looking at your net value, not your gross value. So when you're calculating this, you want to be as accurate as possible is what I'm trying to explain. So maybe get to your pay stubs, and you can enter in what your pay stub was. Maybe your pay stub was around $2,600 is what you actually put in the bank account. All right, now let's say you have a part-time job and that pays, I'm just going to make up a number, $500, and January taxes were 0, and for gifts in January, unfortunately, were 0. All right, so what we want to do is now calculate our answer here. And like I just did earlier, we could do this in a variety of ways. I could say equal to, and do it manually. Type those in, and of course it gives us the answer, but it's a terrible way of doing this, because if you change your mind, you say, well, what if I had made more than this? Well, maybe I made $26.50. Then you'd have to go back and recalculate everything. Well, that's a waste of time, and it defeats the purpose of the spreadsheet. So if you're doing a calculation, you would only do a static calculation when you want a one-off, a quick answer, and that's it. Most of the time you want to do a proper formula. So you could do a formula, which is, say, okay, I want to take the first number plus the second number, and so on. That's a formula, and that's just to add up numbers. That's an addition formula right there. Or we could use a function, and the function would be by using the sum function, so that we just learned. And I could simply highlight all those. That's a lot quicker. Now, let's move on and try that with the expenses. So let's say $1,000. My transportation is as a heading, so I want to have a subheading. So it depends on how you want to do this. I'd probably just type the 3 in here. Let's say my car loan is $350. My insurance is $150, and my gas is $200. All right. Now I don't have to add those up, but I could have a separate calculation for what my transportation expenses are. Or here's a quick way to do it. You can simply highlight it and look down on the status line here, and it gives us a lot of aggregate statistical information. That's my average transportation expense for those 3. I've got 3 expenses. My minimum is 150, my maximum is this, and my total is 700. So this is really the answer I want. How much am I spending on my transportation each month? So that'll show you right here. Now, if I want to know that, this is just a quick way of calculating it. All right, let's say I've got a personal loan of something and I'm paying $150 for that. Let's say my food, I'll just target, my food budget. Put in some simple numbers here. Let's say that's a credit card loan, your education. Well, that could be quite high. Your medical, and let's say 200 for that. All right, so we've added a bunch of data here. So what I want to do now is to calculate it quicker without typing the equal sum. I'm going to go back up here like we did earlier and auto sum. Now before I push enter, I want to check to make sure this is correct. And you can see right away it's not. I've missed housing because there was a space here. The artificial intelligence of Excel tries to anticipate using their algorithm by looking at where the data ends. And it says here that the data went from values to an empty cell, so that the algorithm stopped at this point. So my point of showing you this is to say that you need to verify the formulas every time you do one. You can't rely on Excel. So in this case, I'm just simply going to re-highlight the whole range, and I know that's my correct range, and I push enter. Oh, that was a pretty lucky guess here. I'm right on budget. So from there, I want to calculate my savings. So you might think, well, does Excel have a function for savings? And they don't. You could Google it. You could try to find one. They don't really have one. I mean, technically, you could use the sum function to do it. You could say, let's do the sum. And to calculate savings, we could do this by taking how much money you make total and subtract it from how much money you spent. So I could say, okay, let's go up. How much did I make? Let's add that up. And I want to sum it up with a negative total here. And it comes up with 0. So I could technically use a function to calculate savings, but it's probably not the easiest. It's probably easier to use a formula rather than a function when it's so simple. So knowing the difference between when to use a function to a formula is an important skill. Could you do it in a different way? Yes. And there are multiple ways of calculating. It really comes down to your own knowledge, your preference. Could you argue one's better than the other? Sometimes you can. The example I just showed here by using a function to calculate is a lot more difficult than a simple formula. Let me show you. Formula would be simply taking how much I totally make and subtract it from how much I totally spent. The answer should be, in this case, 0. Perfect. Now, with that done, we've got the ability now to play what if. The questions, what data does for us is it provides a bit of information, it provides information, and it helps to build a story. And you think, well, that sounds kind of weird. Well, how can data provide a story? Well, the story here is that you want to start saving up money to buy something. You have goals. And so what the data is telling me right now is that you have no chance of getting there because you're spending the same amount as you make. So you're not going to get there. So what you have to do is use the tool to manipulate it to give you the outcome to your story. And that is to maybe you want to purchase a house or a car, or you just want to save up for future savings or a rainy day or what have you. So how can we do that with the data? Well, let's go back up to our data. And we can ask ourselves, well, if we want to save more money, we've got two choices. We can either make more money or we can spend less money. So you want to look at each of these individually to get to your goal. Now I'm gonna minimize my screen a little bit here so I can see both of these at the same time. So down here in the right hand corner is the sizing. You can also hold the control key down and roll the mouse. That's another way to do it. All right, now how can I do that? Well, I can play what if. What if I get a new job? Is it possible? How easy is it for you to get a raise at your job? Probably not that easy. Could you go to your boss and say, hey, I want more money because I'm not meeting my goals. My goals and my dreams aren't coming true here because I'm not getting paid much. Your boss is probably going to laugh at you. And that's as far as it's going to go. What about job number 2? Could you work more? Yeah, maybe, but maybe you want to work less. I mean, that's a very valid possibility. Okay, then start asking yourself, could you change your spending habits? That's probably easier because that's up to you. Your employment or your income is controlled by other sources, but your spending is basically up to you. Let's start at the top. Housing. Can you spend less in housing? Well, that's probably a difficult one. It can be done, but it's probably difficult. Could you change your car loan? Again, probably difficult. Insurance? No. Could you drive less? Possibly. You might be able to get that down to 175. Maybe. If you have a loan, these are usually fixed and they fluctuate with interest rates, so I'll probably leave that. Could you eat less? Well, maybe not eat less, but maybe you want to spend more groceries and less at dining out. There's a decision you can make that could impact your household. Maybe you only want to spend 75. The card loan on your credit card, maybe your education, you want to take less courses or buy fewer books or something. Is that possible? It might be possible, might not be. Maybe you can get miscellaneous down to 150. So every time I make a change, I'm asking these questions to the data to tell a different story. What if I change the data here? What will the results be? Well, by modifying my budget data, I can see here instantly that I could save $100 a month if I stick to my budget. Makes sense. Now from here, we could forecast out for the entire year. What's really neat about this is that if I take the number, like I did here for January, I can grab that and make what they call a relative copy. If I move it from here to here, there's no real relative number change here. It wouldn't change much. It should be the same. So as I copy across, I'm assuming my pay is the same for the entire year. Job number 2, well, this one might be a little different. Maybe it's seasonal and I'm only working every second month or something like that. I'd have to enter that data in manually. All right, and then maybe at the holidays, I've got an extra job. I'm working because I'm not at school or what have you. Taxes, you might get a $150 GST rebate. You might plan for $300 for your taxes, another rebate, etc. And then maybe at the end of the year, you get a gift, get some money from family or friends or something like that. You want to put all the income in here. All right, so from there, we've got this one right here. This is the total. And this is summing up January's values. But if you guys copy it from here to here, that's relative. What's relative is I'm going from column B to column C. So if you look at this function right here, this function says I want to sum up B4 to B7. If I copy it from here to here, well, the answer is correct because the range was changed automatically. And this is such a powerful tool in Excel. If you didn't have this, you would have to calculate each one of these manually each time. But because they have a relative copy function, you can drag it across and it calculates instantly. All right, so from there, I'm going to do the next one. I'm going to do this in a group though. So my expenses, I can actually do this as, because these all flow together, I can simply highlight all of this, including my savings, and I can then, as a second step, grab my relative copy handle and drag it across. You can see how fast I can forecast out my data and instantly can see what my savings are per month. That's really not giving me the true answer of what I want. This is a yearly budget. So we've calculated monthlies and we can see what they are each month, but what we really want to do in our goal with our budget is to calculate how much we're going to make for the entire year. So to do that, we have to calculate on the horizontal axis. So I want to calculate how much money did I make for my first job here. So I want to sum it up. And again, I'm going to take the quick method here by going auto sum. And by the way, there's a lot of other functions in here. In fact, all functions can be found in here as well. Now when I hit auto sum, you'll notice that it sums up horizontally. The AI algorithm looks to see if there's any data above or to the right or to below or to the left, and it does. And it goes across until it finds all the data or values until it stops find values. And there's a label. So that's perfect. I've checked my formula, it's correct, push enter, and I make 3180 for my job. Now from there, I can simply grab this and drag it down, or if I double click it, Excel says, hey, do you want to copy it all the way down to for the rest of the data set? And it does, but the algorithm is still not perfect. The AI, I call this sort of artificial intelligence that Excel has, it tries its best to do what it thinks that you want. So when I double clicked it, it did a relative copy down through the data, but it stopped here between the data and the formula. So in some cases you will have to still copy down. So I'm just going to copy that down. And because I copied down, it said it tried to do a calculation here. So this one here I'd probably want to clean up. Now that number right there, $700, is kind of the summary of the ultimate goal of this worksheet. What this is telling me, the story is telling me, is my personal lifestyle, my work history, my spending history is telling the story that I'm only going to save $700 this year if I stick to this budget. Now, this budget, of course, is a living type of document. Every one of these budget items is what you're trying to target, but the numbers change. So what I find I do myself with my budget is I go in consistently, and each month I kind of update my numbers as I progress through the year. We're forecasting out. At the time of this recording, we're in May, but I'm trying to, over the year, I would check all these numbers, but I'm forecasting. So this would be considered a projection or a forecast of the information as a best guess based on what I currently know about that particular line item. All right, so the end result is this one right here. Now, that's a pretty good story. From here, I can go in and start changing my numbers. I can change any number here, and it should change that number right there. So for example, I said, oh, I remember that I get a gift on my birthday. Let's say my birthday is in May, and I get $1,000. Wouldn't that be nice? And in the holidays in December, traditionally I get another maybe $500 for gifts or whatever. And that gives you $150 or $1,500 for gifts for that particular year. So as soon as I do that, it went from $700 to $1,700. Makes a huge difference. Then what you want to do is go through each of these line items and try to make them as accurate as possible. We have a saying in computers called GAGO, and it's an acronym that means garbage in, you get garbage out. That means if you put garbage data into your spreadsheet, you get garbage output. So GAGO is a fundamental principle with spreadsheets. So I guess I can't emphasize that enough about how accurate you have to be when you're typing in your data. Forecasting, of course, is one thing. You're trying to forecast based on projections. You don't know yet, but anything that has elapsed already, you should put in as accurately as possible. The other thing, of course, is to make sure that the formulas are accurate. And we'll go through another video explaining how you can audit formulas to verify and check to make sure things are accurate, and do other types of calculations to verify that your formulas and functions are accurate. All right, so the last kind of main component I want to go through with this video in the time I have left is to go and explain how to format it. If you look at this spreadsheet right here, it works, but it looks terrible. If you were to give this to your boss or a manager, they're going to look at this and go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, but it looks horrible. So we're going to spend a little time here looking at these two groups under the Home tab, called the Font and the Alignment and the Number group. The Style group is kind of a combination of all three. We'll go through these kind of sequentially here. I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. So starting at the top, I got Ryan's Budget. This is the title. So I'm going to drag my mouse across here, and I'm going to say from columns A1 to N1, that range, I'd like to have that as the title bar at the top. So under the Home tab in the Alignment group, there's something here called Merge and Center. If I click on that, A1 to N1 just became A1. You'll look at the range, the name box here, the range name box, and it becomes A1. From there, I could use my format features to make the font a little bit bigger, and I could change the color a little bit if I want. That's a little bit dark. But what I would suggest is that you kind of follow a consistent theme to your font styles and colors. Some companies have styles. They like all of their reports and things to look like their company. So they will have guidelines of what type of default fonts, colors, indentation, and formatting guidelines. So that might be something that you might want to ask your manager is, what are the formatting guidelines if your company has one? All right, another option is I could go back into styles, and I can actually pick a pre-existing style. This saves a lot of time. And some companies, such as Microsoft, have a default theme that they use in all of their Microsoft documentation. And they've kind of set that up to show other companies how they could do that as well. And it brings in consistency within their reporting system with all their spreadsheets and workbooks. They all look kind of the same. They have the same color, fonts, alignments, etc. So there's consistency. It looks more professional. All right, so I'm going to just go down here, and I'm going to stick with this accent. Let's see here. I kind of like... the nice thing is we have the computer set for instant preview. So as I roll my mouse over these styles, they automatically highlight. I'll use heading 1. Since this is the top, it is the heading. I like that. So for my assignments, I'll probably try to stick with that. But because this is a learning environment, I may change from time to time. All right, now it says date. Now date is a kind of an interesting data entry, because date, is it a label, or is it a value, or is it a formula or function? So date, you could enter it in at the time of this recording. I did it at May the 15th, 2021. And when I push enter, Excel actually interprets that as a date and reformats it. So it converts it actually into a value. You might think, well, that's kind of weird, because how could the word May be a number? But dates in Excel are equated to a numeric value, and that it's as a day, it's an integer value. So how I can show that is if we go up to number here and say, let's go in and pick, I'm going to go general. And if you take a look at the date as of the time of this recording, it comes back with an integer value of 44,331. And basically that's the number of days that have elapsed since the year 1900, January 1st, 1900. And they do that because they need a starting point so that we can calculate dates. So you can calculate date ranges, the dates of people's invoices. We can calculate how many days people have been in seniority. Like, dates are used in mathematical calculations, so therefore it has to be a value. But then dates can then be converted into a format to make it look like a date. All right, so how do you format it to a date? Well, under the formatting numbers, because a date is a number, we can go down here and format it to a short date or long date. And again, that really comes down to your company's preference. Some companies are strict with this, and some companies have no rules on this, on how they want their date formats. There's slightly different dates formats between America and Canada. Like I think the US is month, day, year. Canada is day, month, year, which is confusing. And that's why a lot of companies that I've seen tend to follow the word month with the date, comma, and then the year. This seems to be one of the most common types, is this format right here. All right, so from there, there's actually another, there's a whole world of functions around dates, and we'll get into that later. In fact, this little one right here is how do you insert functions. And you can actually go in, and there are dozens and dozens of functions just dealing with date calculations. So that's why I want to emphasize it here to explain that. That just tells me basically what does that information do for me. When you put information on a spreadsheet, it needs to provide something useful. Well, this would say to future people that this budget hasn't been updated since May 15th. So it would be in here. That means that the data in this column probably should be looked at when the next time this file is opened, because it's telling people that it was basically updated on that date. All right, let's move down a little bit further. Now the word income and expenses and savings all share a commonality. These are main category type of data points. So I'm going to highlight all three of those by holding the control key down and selecting them. Once I've done that, I can either go back to my styles and try, you know, a heading 2. That's kind of a nice one right there. So that top one was heading 1. This would be heading 2. Or I could manually do that, you know, up here and just do it myself one by one. All right, now these ones right here, let's say I want to kind of make sure that the individual budget items are kind of unique in a way, and I could make those maybe italics. So I could take all my income and my expense items within my budget and make them italics. Now that's just a personal style. You don't have to do that. Now for this row here, you'll notice that labels are to the left and values are to the right. So I want to either put one over top, the labels over the values, and that would line them up. So in that case, I'm going to select all of them and click on Align to the right. Since I'm here, I may also want to change the style, and I could do something like heading number 2. You can see there's a consistency there that would make it look a little bit nice. All right, moving on down the screen, we've got this line right here, which is kind of unique. That's the total amount of income. And in a lot of financial statements and with accounting practices, we have usually we have a single top line and a double bottom border. So top and double bottom border formatting for total lines. Now again, you'd want to ask your or look at your organization and how they do it, because each company has slightly different formatting rules. But I just want to go through some of the basic ideas here. Now, when it comes to the numbers themselves, I've only entered in the number like 2650, but you know, we could have went comma $2,650 and 0 cents and pushed enter. It would allow me to enter that in. But as a rule of data entry, that you only type in the actual number values. You don't put in the $sign or the comma, but you can put in the decimals, of course. And you can also put in whether it's a negative or not. So, for example, we could have actually gone through here and said minus 1,000. We could have done that, showed that the expenses are actually as a negative. And again, that's really up to you and how you want it to display it. All right, so this one here I want to take back to my original format. So I'm going to take that format and paint it with this format. There we go. So I want all this data to look pretty similar. But again, when we're formatting a report, it's typical with currency values that we format the top line with currency values and the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the number format, and I'm going to select a currency. You've got other types of currencies that you can select, but we use the $sign, so I'll use that. And because I don't have pennies here, I'm also going to decrease the number of decimal places. I don't need that. All of this data right here is just commas. I don't want the $sign, and I don't want decimals. But again, at the bottom of the answers or the totals, we want to put in $signs. and again take out decimals. So what you're looking at now is something that looks quite nicely formatted. It shows zeros as a hyphen, meaning that there was nothing put in as zero. This is blank, there's nothing there. And things are put in as with dollar signs or commas if they need be. Now I want to repeat the same process here, but this time I'm going to be a little bit quicker. I'm going to select the first line here, and this line right here, and this line right here. All three of those are going to share dollar signs. I want all three of those to be dollars with no decimals. And everything in the center here to just be comma with no decimals. And that's what now what we've got is a financial budget worksheet that's prepared for our individual needs with, not a lot of work. Anyways, I hope that helps, and I would highly encourage you guys to build yourselves a personal budget and calculate how much money that you can save each month, and then start to think about your story and think about how can you either make more money. I mean, that's a great goal, and that's why you guys are at school. You're going to get better jobs, make more money, so that you can spend more money. That's really the essence of everything we're doing, isn't it? So spend some time, put one together, and I'll see you guys in the next class.